Donald Trump has been humiliating himself today, not only because the deal maker in chief was unable to actually cut a deal to avoid a government shutdown, which we will see in the coming hours, but because he opened his mouth in front of generals who were completely silent listening to his idiocy, and in front of the press who were confused as he blathered on. But if you thought Donald Trump was humiliated, the person who suffered the worst humiliation today was actually JD Vance, who Trump just threw under the bus and crushed his biggest dream. We are going to get into it all, and an interview with Congressman Jamie Raskin, my favorite member of Congress. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we can get into how Trump humiliated Vance, I want to start with a part of this shutdown, Congress being sent home, that isn't getting covered nearly enough, and that is Republicans blocking the Epstein files with this move. Swear her in. Republican frantically adjourns House to avoid swearing in new member to duck Epstein files vote. Republicans swiftly adjourned the House session Tuesday as Democrats shouted for a newly elected Democratic member to be sworn in. Rep-elect Adelita Grijalva won a special election on September 23rd, easily trouncing her Republican opponent in the deep blue district 69% to 29%. Grijalva will succeed her father, who died on March 13th, and representing Arizona's 7th district. House Republicans are dragging their feet on letting Grijalva officially join their ranks, and it's looking increasingly likely that the government shutdown deadline at midnight could arrive without Grijalva being sworn in, further delaying her officially becoming a member of Congress. Widely speculated as contributing to the reason for the delay in swearing in Grijalva is the vote to release the Epstein files, as she would be the 218th to vote to pass the bill in the House. There has been a lot of demand, including from Donald Trump's MAGA base, to release the Epstein files and his former girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell, all the documents pertaining to them both, which have only been heightened in their interest because of the lack of transparency. Thomas Massie, one of the Republican sponsors of the bipartisan measure to release the Epstein files, confirmed to reporters just after Grijalva's special election that she would be the 218th vote. Rep. Morgan Griffith, a Republican, was designated to act as Speaker pro tem during the House's pro forma session, but he didn't hold the gavel for long. After leading the House in the Pledge of Allegiance, Griffith immediately turned back to the podium and just said, pursuant to Clause 13 of Rule 1, the House stands adjourned until 3:30 p.m. on Friday, October 3rd at 2025. As Griffith began speaking, Democrats began calling out to be recognized and for Grijalva to be sworn in, chanting, "Swear her in," and "Shame on you." The Virginia Republican was undeterred and gavelled to the end of the session. So Donald Trump is not just shutting down the government because he humiliated himself in the inability to make a deal, but also because this helps him deal with his Epstein scandal. It prevents a further signature to go on the discharge petition so we can get an official up or down vote on the House. And of course, it's not the only thing Donald Trump is running away from. He's also terrified of anyone recognizing just how incompetent he is when it comes to running this government. And it is for that very reason that Donald Trump was in a meeting in which he humiliated JD Vance. But before we get to that meeting, I want to see the result, and it's called out by Jessica Tarlov.
And Donald Trump made the same threat when he was speaking earlier today as well. He said we can do a lot of really bad things. We can do things that they don't want us to do. And yes, Democrats don't want people to get fired, and Democrats don't want people to lose their health care. But I think the Republican Party is trying to act like they have the upper hand, and they just don't on the merits. First of all, 45% of Americans would blame them versus 32% that would blame the Democrats. And we saw what happens when you give Republicans the votes. We did that in March, and they have governed by and for themselves. They think they don't have to negotiate, when typically on these kinds of things, on CRs, you do that because you don't have the 60 votes to do it.
I hear the polls. I hear what you're saying, but this is kind of simple. You know, this is a plain
but it's not. It's not. Because
continuing resolution.
But it's a clean resolution inclusive of these cuts. And there are smart Republicans, like a Josh Hawley, even Senator Thune has said that he's been concerned about this. When you look at what's going to happen with 114% hikes on these ACA premiums, that affects Democrats just as much as Republicans. And there are a lot of Republicans on Obamacare.
Donald Trump just can't make a deal. The government does not work under Republican control. We have seen this for the past 2 years with the MAGA majority that was in the House. We're seeing it right now with this current Congress. Donald Trump and his stooges do not know how to legislate. They are unable to do so. Donald Trump is bad at governing. Fundamentally, that is the truth, which is weird because he really seems to want to continue to do it no matter how many times he fails. And that is why JD Vance was humiliated today. Funny detail from inside the Oval Office meeting today around the shutdown, Trump tried to give Schumer and Jeffries Trump 2028 hats. They did not take them. Leader Jeffries then turned to JD Vance and asked him how he feels about that, with Vance replying, "No comment." The room then erupted in laughter. One Twitter user wrote, Trump is running for a third term, and Vance is okay with it. The entire administration is okay with it and will allow him to go ahead with it. Now, one thing I can tell you is that JD Vance is very much not okay with it. Trump throwing him under the bus and saying, JD, I understand you have hopes and dreams of running for president, of which you will fail, but not really give a shit, because of course Trump doesn't care about Vance, and of course Vance doesn't care about Trump. They were laughing at him because they know what a joke he is, that he's just really Donald Trump's floor mat. He walks all over him. He tells him what to do. Vance is willing to flip-flop positions to accommodate Trump all the time because he knows he needs his endorsement to run for president. But not only is it not coming, who Donald Trump is endorsing is himself. And of course we know this is illegal. Donald Trump cannot run for a third term. I hate even the idea of entertaining it because of what it takes away from our rule of law. And someone who has been talking about fighting Donald Trump back using the rule of law to do so is Jamie Raskin. We spoke about so much in a great interview. I hope you stick around all the way through.
Congressman, it is always great to be joined by yourself, and we've got a lot to cover today. Unfortunately, there's a looming government shutdown. Donald Trump has declared war on every single major American city. But
Democrat-run city.
I think that's an important point to make. But I think where I want to start is kind of the pudding leaking out of our president's brain, because as he was talking about this looming shutdown in his meeting with Chuck Schumer and Leader Jeffries, he didn't remember who Hakeem Jeffries was. We talked about this earlier today on the show. What state of mind is a president in who can't actually remember anything, make decisions while he's trying to supposedly make a deal that he doesn't understand? Do you think Trump even understands what's happening right now?
Well, I'm sure the Democratic leader of the House would like to be able to forget Donald Trump. Unfortunately, none of us can forget about him, and he's making himself ubiquitous and omnipresent these days. So I've long since ceased to speculate about his state of mind. I still think it would be great for us to legislate in general, without respect to this particular episode, the 25th Amendment legislation that I had proposed back in 2018, I think it was, where the Constitution says that a majority of the cabinet and the vice president can declare that there's an inability of the president to act, or the vice president and a majority of another body set up by Congress. And that body was never set up by Congress under the 25th Amendment. And so, completely without regard to this president or any other president, that body should be set up in the event of emergency. We've got 535 members of Congress. We only have one president. And so we should be ready to follow through on the provisions of the 25th.
No, I think so as well, considering that we are in a moment of crisis that Donald Trump really doesn't want to address. He just wants to take advantage of, whether it be to spin lies about immigrants, trans people, for some reason he's blaming for the government shutdown, or using this as an opportunity to fire as many federal workers as possible. A lot of lies floating out there in the ether from MAGA about this shutdown. Which one do you think is most important to tackle right now?
Well, let's start with the federal workers who, of course, have been under attack since January of this year. They started off with a plan to slash and burn through the federal workforce, and they've sacked and fired and riffed tens of thousands of federal workers. We're talking air traffic controllers, we're talking Forest Service firefighters, cancer researchers at NIH in my district, people who are working on climate change or to protect the fisheries and the quality of our seafood at NOAA, which is also in my district. All of these people have been under attack and have been forced to go to court to try to vindicate their rights. There have been more than 400 different cases brought against this reign of lawlessness, and we are winning more than 90% of the cases in the federal district courts, and an overwhelming number also. Appeals courts, our problem is the Supreme Court, but that's a different story, what the Roberts Court has done, and it's been gerrymandered and stacked and packed and so on. But I guess the point I'm making is nothing has stopped them from trying to destroy the federal workforce. They've been claiming for months that the civil service itself is unconstitutional because nothing can get in the way of the president firing whomever he wants. So when they say, well, if the Democrats don't do exactly what we want them to do, then we're just going to fire more workers. They've been firing all the workers anyway, and they claim the right to fire workers without any impediment of law. And so we are in court defending the separation of powers, defending the Civil Service Act, the right of due process to federal workers, and so on.
There's a lot we can talk about in this moment, but a broad theme of the Trump presidency that I think he wants inflicted upon us is something that you have brought a stark contrast to in all of our conversations, and it's because you always have some legal victory for us to talk about. But I feel like Donald Trump wants us to think that he is inevitable, Like that is something that he wants framed in all of these fights, that ultimately he will win. That is not the case.
Yes.
Can you speak to some of the legal victories that we've had lately that prove that Donald Trump is not the all-powerful dictator that he wants to be? Because if we think that he is, the pre-capitulation happens. The universities, the law firms, ABC. But if we show he's not the strong man, and we can beat him, it's a morale boost, and also we can move forward. Can you talk about some of those victories?
Well, first, that's a great point, Jack. Authoritarians always want you to believe that their reign over humanity is inescapable and inevitable. The dictators want you to believe that they have an ironclad control over everything that happens in society, and they don't. That's the importance of our win the other day with Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying, well, a comedian's just a comedian, but comedy is important because comedy shows people that you don't have to be afraid. That yes, you can lampoon the president of the United States, you can make fun of the president of the United States and not go to jail because we live in a free society. That's something the Republicans certainly understood when Joe Biden was president, when Barack Obama was president, when Donald Trump was running around saying that he wasn't born in the United States and was not a U.S. citizen. You can say what you want about elected officials in America, and the First Amendment covers that. But look, the rule of law is holding. If you look at what's going on in the federal district courts, we are winning so many of these cases.
Are you tired of winning yet? You got to that point.
Unfortunately, the Supreme Court means I'm not tired of winning because their shadow docket, their emergency docket, has been used to reverse a lot of these victories. A lot of them have not been reversed and have held so far. But I mean, let's just look at some of them. The U.S. District Court in San Francisco, Justice Breyer's brother, Judge Breyer, who sits on the federal bench there, he said, no, the president doesn't have the right to send federal troops in to conduct ordinary law enforcement. Donald Trump is, sending troops out to conduct traffic stops. He said he was going to do it in D.C. to get rid of the graffiti, right? No, we don't use the military for those purposes. The Posse Comitatus Act says that the military can only be sent in if there's a violent insurrection to be put down. And we know for Donald Trump, that's a very high standard. 140 injured, wounded, disfigured, hospitalized police officers wasn't enough for him to say that that was an insurrection when he incited it. But in any event, he set a very high threshold for determining insurrection. Foreign military invasion, we're not suffering that, or an inability to administer federal law. And none of those things have happened. He said, your invasion of Los Angeles is illegal. It's contrary to law. Another victory out in that part of the country was actually in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans, where the court rejected one of the founding lies of the new Trump administration, which is that there was a war against Venezuela, so they could just sweep Venezuelans off the street, describe them as gang members, and deport them to a torturer's prison in El Salvador. And the Fifth Circuit, which is a very conservative court, cut them off at the very first argument, saying the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which you've invoked, is not even applicable here because we're not at war. If we were at war, the Congress would tell you we're at war because only Congress has the power to declare war, not the president and not Tulsi Gabbard and not the people on their group chat on Signal, right? So those are like two very important victories that have been won. There have been victories won against them for just sacking probationary federal workers. Probationary sounds like they did something bad, like they knocked over a liquor store or something. They're on probation.
How do we all?
but these people are on probation because they did such a great job in another position. They've been promoted, so they're in a 12-month probationary period for the start of their new job. So we're winning on a lot of these, and yet nonetheless, the Trump people keep coming back with more and more outrageous arguments. Now they're basically saying the entire civil service system is unconstitutional because it ties the hands of the president, who's got to have the power to just unilaterally fire air traffic controllers and Forest Service firefighters and cancer researchers and food and drug inspectors if he wants to get rid of them for no reason at all, even if they were hired under the terms of the civil service, which is if they are meeting all their expectations and doing a good job, they can't be fired for political reasons. That's why we've got a civil service.
Yeah, it's a lot of flip-flopping around kind of the ideology and what Republicans claim to care about. And you've talked extensively about this when you define why you are a progressive and what you care to conserve in our government. I think JD Vance is the prime example of someone who will supposedly be inheriting the conservative movement. I don't know what exactly he is after to conserve, But how do we take kind of what the Trump administration has done in an effort to break our government and use it as an opportunity to instruct people of the importance as they are trying to fire these civil servants, as they are trying to gut the important research, as they are trying to break what makes our country so great? How can we use this as an opportunity to talk about what Donald Trump has stripped away and say, hey, this next generation of conservatives, they don't actually care to conserve. They just want to make government.
That's absolutely right. Well, we get two rival conceptions of government, right? And the Democrats, the party of democracy and freedom, we say that the government has got to be an instrument of the common good. Mm-hmm. So we've got to be looking for the vaccines that will save us. We've got to be promoting public health in the country. We've got to be promoting the ability of young people to purchase houses. We've got to be taking care of the health care of the people. Because the average age is now like 37 or 38 where people are able to buy their first house in America. So the government's got to be working on the agendas of the American people. Their theory is the government is a plaything for the people who get in.
Yeah.
If you're able to work the system and game the system like Donald Trump and get into office, then it's for you to go out and make billions of dollars, which he's done since January. It's okay for your family to go make every kind of foreign deal with every sort of foreign dictator or despot while you claim to be for America first, but all you do is make money off of all of these corrupt authorities.
And bail out Argentina.
And bail out Argentina with our money.
His granddaughter is selling merch now at the White House. Did you see this?
I missed that one. No, I missed that ripoff.
His granddaughter, I got you a shirt actually. No, his granddaughter selling merch at the White House. It really seems like.
So it's like a money-making operation for them. They want to close the rest of the government down. If it doesn't help them, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, the Labor Department, the State Department, the Education Department, that's for just the rabble. That's for the masses. That doesn't help the Trumps. They're already into crypto. They've already got money with Saudi Arabia and China and United Arab Emirates. That's how they're making their money. And then, their underlings like Tom Homan, they're just taking bribes in $50,000 bags, allegedly caught on videotape taking a $50,000 payment in a kava bag. Who takes a $50,000 payment in a kava bag? I mean, when I go to kava, I just get a burrito.
Well, I think maybe we should tell Tom Homan to step up the, to me, I imagine like a Looney Tune type, like runaway and like the smoke puff up. But yeah, not a great look for Tom Homan. Another file that it seems like we need to get out of this administration.
Yes.
I appreciate you being always so loud in the fight and giving us hope. We desperately need it today.
Thank you, Jack. Hang tough.
Thank you so much.